the NFL calendar, an important date for some teams looking to save some dough. Senior NFL reporter Jeremy Fowler is here with us now to explain. There's a number of notable players and teams that are impacted by today's date. So take us through it, starting with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, this is the time of year, Amina, now that we're into June. Teams can prorate salary cap money if they trade a big-name player. It saves them on the cap. We'll start with Kirk Cousins here, Atlanta Falcons. So we know he wants a new home. He's sort of in quarterback purgatory right now because the Falcons are holding on to him. If they are to trade him this summer, they would save $27.5 million on their salary cap. The problem is that $27.5 is fully guaranteed. They need to find a team that will pay at least a healthy portion of that. As of now, that has not happened, and that quarterback market is dried up. Pittsburgh is still angling for Aaron Rodgers, so we'll see. Maybe he's a backup plan. Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins can save around $15 million on the cap now that we are into June if they were to trade him. It seems like the Dolphins and Hill have smoothed things out despite some turmoil late in the year. Hill has been saying the right things of late, but he's got a $15.85 million roster bonus due at the end of the summer, August 31st. So perhaps that's a trigger date if there are enough interested teams to swing a trade. So Miami might keep Hill. However, they are likely to trade that man, Jalen Ramsey. They've been engaged with multiple teams on a trade. The LA Rams, Ramsey's former team, have been in the mix. I'm told he's at least on the players' radar. We'll see if they get to the point where they get a deal done. The tricky part here is that $24 million in guaranteed salary. But now that we are into June, the Dolphins can save around $10 million on their cap once they get this trade done. That would free them up for some flexibility, maybe sign a veteran cornerback on the market. And then you got Bryce Huff. So he was on the bench for the Eagles. This was destined to be a trade. It looks like they were going to finalize the trade with the San Francisco 49ers, according to our Adam Schefter. And I've been hearing that San Fran has been in on this since March. They've been kind of poking around on Huff. They like him. They feel like he can impact Robert Saleh's defense. The Eagles have to spread out his guaranteed salary. They're probably going to split the money with San Francisco, but they're going to save about $8 million on their salary cap.
Yeah, just as you mentioned, Huff was a healthy scratch for Philly in the Super Bowl, so we'll see what kind of impact he can make in San Fran. So let's pivot to another team that'll look very different this season, the Patriots. They could have up to 11 new starters in Week 1 under new head coach Mike Vrabel. So what's the buzz around New England headed into this season?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the Patriots, and I've asked some people around the league, some personnel folks, and they're thinking that they can push in the AFC East. Maybe not supplant Buffalo at the top, but you look at the Jets in transition, the Dolphins in transition. Patriots are coming up with Mike Vrabel, new leadership. You know the defense is usually going to be good. There are enough believers around the league in Drake May that he can get things done. 3 new starters on the offensive line. You got a veteran like Morgan Moses, draft pick Will Campbell. They're going to be better up front. So the key is, can they pass the ball? I mean, they haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since Julian Edelman. It's been a while. Watch for 3rd-round pick Kyle Williams. They're really high on him.
Yeah, the win total for New England at ESPN Bet is set at 8.5. They only won 4 games last season, so the only way you could go is up if you're New England. Jeremy Fowler.
No, baby, no truth to that.
The Cleveland Browns began their first OTA session yesterday with the most notable absence from voluntary workouts being Myles Garrett. Apparently, if you look at his Instagram, he's in Japan. All the focus, though, is on the quarterback battle. It's very, very crowded there. Here's Kevin Stefanski.
We're mixing it up every single day, so that's why I tell you not to read much into it, even though you guys don't listen to me. But we're just trying to get guys exposure to different concepts, those type of things. So we're not leaning into or worried about the order at this moment.
Because it's a good question to bait somebody into answering, and no matter how they answer it, it kind of makes the guy that's answering it look bad. If I say I don't want to be a mentor, I look bad. If I say I do want to be a mentor, then I look like an idiot that doesn't care about being good and playing football. I tend to try to be honest, and I've said I'm not a mentor. I play football. There's learning experiences, and I have a lot of experience, and I can talk on things, and hopefully they listen. But it's not necessarily like my job to make sure they listen to me.
You gotta appreciate his honesty there, Bug. I mean, really. You got Flacco, you got Pickett, you got Gabriel, you got Sanders. I mean, what do you make of this crowded room, Bug?
They got a lot of misfit toys in that room, man, and I get it. First of all, I love the honesty from Joe Flacco. His job is not to be the role model and the mentor. It's to come in there and be the veteran quarterback and try to bring some stability to that room. As far as the room in general, like Deshaun Watson, 2 Achilles surgeries, Flacco, Kenny Pickett with the 2 gloves, then you got the 2 rookies coming in with Sanders and Gabriel. I don't know what we're going to get from them. I don't think anybody with any sense knows what you're going to get from that room. I suspect at some point it's going to be Flacco or Kenny Pickett trying to figure out who's going to start, and then they're going to figure out with the young guys. I don't think Watson is going to be ready coming off not just one, but 2 Achilles surgeries. So at some point, Lewis, like if you're really going to be honest about this room, they really don't know what they have in this room right now, and they got to hope that somebody steps forward, whether it's a young guy or one of the veterans that they have.
Look, it's really going to be all about rep efficiency, right? As a player, that's what you're looking for. As a coach, that's what you're looking for. Meaning, look, everyone's not going to get equal reps. Everyone's not going to get the same amount of reps, exposed to the same looks, get the same number of throws in each period, whether it be first down, second down, third down, red area, 2 minute. But it's about the efficiency. It's about having as close to perfect reps as possible. And then it's up to Kevin Stefanski. And then I think it's important for Kevin Stefanski to move this around from day to day, from practice to practice, to make sure, as he just said, make sure all these guys, though, are exposed to the situations that he needs to expose them to, so he can then make a real, a real organic decision about who's the best guy, so it's truly a meritocracy. You want to make sure that in the end is what comes out of this, and that you're not stacking the deck in one guy's favor over another, which we've seen coaches do now, because they're human beings, and they want certain guys to excel based upon their own convictions going into it. And we've seen that mess things up in the history, and we'll see it mess things up going forward.
I think it's so interesting what you're saying, because I remember covering the Seahawks in 2012 up at that training camp up in Renton, Washington, and they had the late Tavares Jackson in camp. You had Matt Flynn, who just signed a massive free agent deal. And in comes a third-round Russell Wilson, and he was bar none the best player. And then the preseason starts, and he's throwing touchdowns all over the Cowboys. And to a man, you couldn't look around to anyone covering the team or anyone within the organization and say anything than, hey, our third-round rookie's the best quarterback we got. He started in week 1. It's really difficult for a day 3 quarterback to start out of the gate. But with the current situation, and you have a Joe Flacco who has been there, done that, and has been there, done that with this team. And you have Kenny Pickett, who was a backup last year. And you have Dylan Gabriel, who no one else really saw as a day 1 or day 2 pick, other than the Cleveland Browns. There is a window. But for Shedeur to have that opportunity, he has to outwork and outplay those guys every single day, because the uphill battle of being a day 3 pick, that is real. Yet I think there is a window open, and in other situations where there's a bona fide starting quarterback, there wouldn't be. So there is an opportunity for Shedeur to win this job.
Yeah, you bring up the Wilson comparison, maybe the guy nobody saw coming, and then in no time, he brought them to their first Super Bowl championship. Well, the Ravens have been one of the top teams in the NFL since John Harbaugh took over in 2008. During that span, they have the 4th best win percentage in the league. They are tied for the 3rd most playoff wins. That might surprise you. Their average margin of victory is 2nd highest in the league. Maybe it shouldn't surprise you given Super Bowl 47 and that title, but they really, this version of the Ravens, Peter, has to take the next step in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson sits at 3-5 in his career in the playoffs. So, I mean, what concerns, if any, do you have about this roster, or do you see them as complete?
How do they get over the hump? It was all there for them last year. The Chiefs weren't the same mighty Chiefs offensively they've been in the past. The Bills were a team that the Ravens absolutely blew out on a Sunday night earlier in the season. And they get to the playoffs, and of course they get that opportunity, and they go to Buffalo. And whereas Lamar Jackson had been flawless the last several months of the season, those 2 bad picks in the first half, and then Mark Andrews, who's been Mr. Reliable his entire career with Baltimore, drops 2 big passes, including the potential game-leading 2-point conversion at the end. A heartbreaking finish, but that's been too much the norm under Harbaugh the last few years. So now you've got Lamar Jackson, who was this young, up-and-coming quarterback, now nearing 30, and then the other end of 30 coming with, wait a second, are these the best years of Lamar Jackson and the best team we're going to be able to field based on contracts and salary cap and everything else that happens in this league? Gosh, to me, if I'm the Ravens, I'm looking on paper and I'm saying Eric DeCosta has built the best team of football on paper. Lamar Jackson's been as good as any quarterback in the NFL the past several seasons. We don't have a Super Bowl appearance to show for it. So you can't control crazy things like L'Jarius Sneed knocking a ball out of Zay Flowers' hands or Mark Andrews dropping passes. Yet at some point, you're not going to get those opportunities every season. You got to capitalize on those moments, and they just haven't the past few years.
And I completely agree. And the reason why they haven't capitalized on those moments is because their best players haven't played at their best in those big moments. You talk about Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson. You talk about a defense that has been subpar from a passing standpoint the last couple of years. It's really simple, guys. If you look at the teams that have won, look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Their offensive line and Saquon Barkley carried the day in the postseason. And Jalen Hurts did what he normally does, but their best players showed up. When the Kansas City Chiefs win, Patrick Mahomes shows up and shows out in the postseason. Your best players have to show up at the most crucial times. We often talk about superstars when they're made. They're not made in the regular season. They're made in the postseason. We're watching that right now with the NBA. What's the difference? The big-time players show up in the biggest moments. And Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and those guys on the offensive side of the football, they have been outstanding during the regular season the last couple of years. They have got to do it when it counts the most. And to be honest, that's the last step. Like, you don't really need to go out and get more weapons, more offensive linemen. Like, you don't need a bunch of stuff. They have everything they need. Sometimes what you have needs to perform at its best on the day that you need it.
Yeah, it's funny that I'm going to use Mike Tomlin, one of their bitter division rivals, to kind of explain what Baltimore needs to do. Mike Tomlin likes to say you have to make the routine plays routinely. Ball security is a routine play. It's something you practice every day, from day one, training camp, install, OTAs, minicamp. That's routine. Catching the football is routine. Mark Andrews can do that in his sleep. Catching it is routine. All that was on that sprint right roll out there in the 2-point. All that is look the ball in. It's a little bit behind you. Get your body down, cup it in, look it in, move on. Lamar knows better than when he's trying to scramble